All right, welcome to Driftwood Guitars. My name is Chris. We got Matt behind the camera, back where he belongs. It's brutal.
Yeah.
Just brutal.
Dang.
We just got back from NAMM, so we're finally able to get back to the 3,000-year-old guitar build. Where we left off was we laminated the sides for this thing. I did want to show you this, which I thought was kind of cool. These have been just sitting loose on top of a workbench like for 2 weeks now, and not inside the mold, but look how nice. Look at this, watch. Oh yeah. Look how good that fits. And like, if that's not a laminated side, that would, that wouldn't have happened. So it's just a fun little thing. But what we need to do to move this guitar down the line is we need to make the neck block and the heel block. And so what we have is just some Spanish cedar here. And we are going to glue on this neck, the fingerboard extension plate. And we are going to round them over to fit on side of here. So what I wanted to show you that's kind of cool about the how and the why and the WTF that everybody's been asking about the transverse brace. So we talked about the transverse brace in a couple of episodes ago, and people kept talking about, well, you know, how's it going to tie in and all these other questions that they had. But what's cool is now I can finally show you what's going to happen once we glue that fingerboard extension on. This whole thing actually is pretty much going to lock in with the transverse brace and give us access through the truss rod through here. So we have really going to have this area much more supported than locked in, especially with the rim of the guitar fully attached to it. So that's kind of where my mind's at on that whole thing. And what we need to do is head over to the edge sander, but first, shameless plug, we got shirts in. We just got our Title Chapter shirts in. Super cool. This is the one in coral, and on the back it's got the old Driftwood Guitars logo, which is super neat. And these are available in black, in this coral color, and I think a couple other colors. Our store is actually linked below, and Matt and I are going to get the rest of the shirts, I think tomorrow. What's today? Today's Tuesday? Yeah, tomorrow we're going to get the rest of our the shirts that are available so we can show you what they look like. But those of you that have bought shirts, we do appreciate it. It's a good way of supporting what we do here. And yes, now we can move over to the edge sander. Okay, over at the edge sander, we are now going to be able to put the 45-degree angle in here and here. It's not really something that's necessary. It's just something that I do aesthetically. It looks really nice. It saves a little bit of weight. Some people just round them over with a router bit. And you can do the step that I'm about to do here with a router bit, or you could use a table saw. You could even use a hand plane. But I just happen to use the edge sander most of the time. So we're just actually going to put this on here, knock a 45 into it, and flip it around, do the same thing on the other side. So we'll do that real quick. Okay, so that's done, and what we need to do, well, I guess I'll show you what it looks like. So we have put the 45 degrees into the neck block, and then the next thing that I need to do is actually put a 1.5 degree angle on this part, which is where the fingerboard extension is going to go, because you got to remember the top of these guitars have a 30-foot radius on them, at least for my guitars they do. So we're actually going to put that in there now. It's just going to save us some sanding when we start to do the actual radiusing of the sides. So I'm going to use the miter attachment and dial in 1.5 degrees, 1 degree, kind of in that ballpark, and pop that on real quick, and we'll be off to the races again.
Miter?
I'll be out of nowhere. Okay, so what we need to do is pretty simple, right? We need to glue this onto here. But I want to show you a little trick that I learned a little while ago. I think, me and Matt were talking, I think I learned it on Bourbon Moth's channel. If you guys don't know about Bourbon Moth, go check out this channel. It's an awesome woodworking channel.
If you don't know about Bourbon Moth, you might be the last person on earth.
I feel like him and I could be good buddies. I don't know why. I think everybody feels that way. That's why he has so many subscribers. But, so...
He does not feel the same way.
He does not feel the same way. But he actually has this trick that you can use for table salt for woodworking, and it is super useful. But first, let me grab some clamps. And we're back. Okay, so what he does, you actually use any sort of water-soluble glue this works with. We're going to apply our LMI instrument glue here. Go a little nuts. stick that there. Okay, now normally what I would have done is now put this wooden plate here and try to clamp it down, but if any of you have spent any time woodworking, you know how that story ends. You go to clamp it down and it's gonna slide all over the place and you'll be cussing the whole time. So what you can do is just get a little salt. Like I mentioned earlier about the aluminum foil, get your own salt. Don't use your wife's or your significant other's salt. Get your own salt. Pro tip. So then you take your salt, you sprinkle it on there very lightly to taste, and and then you actually can just stick this on here and we will begin clamping. But what the salt does is it actually presses into the wood and keeps this from sliding around, and it is a total and utter game changer. You don't want to use very much of it because you don't want it to affect the integrity of the wood joint. So it's just enough. Just enough. Like I said, just a flavor. Clamp her down. And this thing didn't budge. Didn't move one molecule. One last little clamp. There we go. Just one last little clamp. Cool. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this dry for like 45 minutes and we'll be back with you in about 2 seconds. Through the magic of television, I have this other one that's already been glued up. It's like a cooking show. So this one is now ready to go. So what we need to do, I'm gonna reassemble my mold here. Patent pending on my mold technique. I made this. We'll do a video on how I make my molds later, but these are super cool molds that I make. So what we need to do is obviously we need to join these and create the outside of our guitar or the rim. And we can't just leave these perfectly flat because they're not going to match the radius of the top and the radius of the bottom. So we're going to go back over to the edge sander and we're going to sand these until we get these to sit and match that radius. Pretty simple job. I really can't think of a whole lot of other ways to do this if you don't have an edge sander. A belt sander will work. You could probably get away with it with just some good old-fashioned hand sanding. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult, but pretty self-explanatory stuff here. So we'll go do that and move over to the edge sander. All right, so we're gonna, the trick here that I have found is you can easily have the old Valentine's Day heart syndrome going on where you take off a little here, take off a little there. Next thing you know, the geometry is all off. So it's just to be very conscious about how much you're moving. It's not gonna take much. We're just gonna rock it very slightly to take off material, and we're gonna continue to keep checking it often with the mold. So we'll do the neck block first. Cool. All right, so I think you should be able to see it pretty good here. For the tail block here, it's damn near close. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect because you gotta remember you're gonna have the thickness of the sides hovering there. And then same thing with the neck block. This equation changes a lot when you're doing a cutaway on a guitar because you have to actually compensate for the cutaway part as well. But just for a standard non-cutaway guitar, it's actually a lot easier, so I am grateful for that. But we are gonna now head over to the main workbench and we need to now trim the sides to get them to fit inside this mold perfectly. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is then prepare the sides for the neck and heel block. So we actually need to take them and trim them to their exact perspective sizes. So what we're gonna do, on my molds I have pencil marks here and a pencil mark there, exactly where that mark is, where that spot is. So we're gonna just mark it and cut it. The nice thing is with these sides fitting the mold so easily and so perfectly since they're laminated, I don't have to use a spreader. If you are not doing laminate sides, before you do this, you wanna make sure that you spread these sides to fit the mold perfectly before you do it, because otherwise they're not gonna fit the mold correctly. So we don't have to worry about that. So we're just gonna mark it and cut it. I gotta find a pencil. Here we go. There. No. I used to like put this in the vise to do this part, but it was really easy to screw up. So I actually started doing it like this by just clamping it to my workbench. Once again, 40 ways to skin the cat. You can do this with a bandsaw. I don't have the cojones for that because all it takes is just for it to grab it and to destroy the wood. So I do that, and then I just use a nice Japanese pull saw, and it's that simple. And we're going to flip it and do the same thing to the other side. Bang. So that's easy. One day when I have a nicer workbench, I'm gonna have to get used to not abusing it so much, but for now. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna rinse and repeat on the other side real quick. Pretty self-explanatory. All right, so now that we have the sides all trimmed up, they should, in theory, fit inside the mold perfectly. You want them to be really tight. That is the trick. You don't want to have a whole lot of slop in there because it says you have to make up for it later with clamps and cauls and all that stuff. So we will put this in here just to confirm fit. Make sure everything is happy and copacetic. Snap! Let's see. Ha! That was actually perfect. So that fits nicely. Once you put the spreaders in here and get it all going. Actually, let's just show you. And then we should be able to put that in there. And we still got to add all the kerfing and everything, but now we actually have a nice spot for us to be able to put that and to put this. So we're going to pull this back out of the mold real quick. I'm going to mark the center on all of these and we will clamp them on. We have to do the neck joint first, then we'll do the neck block first, and then we'll do the heel block second. So it's two separate glue ups. And then this will be ready for the kerfing to be glued in. So we'll do that real fast. Okay, so we've got the middle of both of these found. Like I said, I usually start with the neck block, no particular reason. Once again, this is different if you're doing a cutaway guitar. It just is more complicated. I swear to God. There we go. Wait for it, folks. All right. So what we need to do, this is how I do this. I've never actually changed up the way that I do this for years and years and years. I actually just put a piece of wood on the end of my workbench here. In this case, just a chunk of some flame maple. Clamp her down. And then we're actually going to use this as just a space for us to be able to do the actual glue up right here and right here. So I have little clamping cauls that I'll use. And it's pretty straightforward. I put a little salt on it, just like we did with the other one, just to keep it from sliding around, because that was always the hardest thing for me to do, is to be able to do this without it just turning into a slippery mess and having issues all over the place. So I'm going to sprinkle my salt to here. We are going to grab some of our clamping cauls. We're going to grab some of these. This is not rocket science. So I'm going to do half of it at a time. We have the pencil line, and we are going to put some glue on here. You need to make sure that you pay attention to your sides, that you are putting the front, which is where the fretboard extension is, towards the front of the sides. You can screw that up pretty easily. So this side's got a slight curve to it, and that's the back. This side's flat, that's the front. A little salt. Once again, to flavor. Some people like a little more, some people like a little less. We'll clamp this on here. Another thing that I do a lot of times too is I'll just put a quick clamp on the side that I'm not clamping. It just allows me to have one extra free hand. One extra free hand. Holy frijoles. Clamping call. I swear to God. This is not as hard as I'm making it out to be. See, Matt's over there holding the camera. And he can't help me out because he's holding the camera. So I'm like,
if only you had like a shop assistant.
Jesus. No, you got the camera. You just do the camera, and I'll just struggle. It's fine. I did it for years before you were here.
For what it's worth, Chris, I'm not laughing with you. I'm laughing at you. Okay.
Okay. Now we're cooking with butane. I'll clamp that there. I'm not clamping these super tight right now. I always try to follow like you do the lug nuts on your car. You're not gonna crank it all down at once. And then once I have kind of all 4 of these in place, then I'll start really cinching them down. But you can see why the salt really helps out a lot right there, because that kept me from having too much struggles at all with slipping. So I definitely highly recommend it. I've been doing it for a few years now, and I've never had any issues with structural integrity because of the salt. I think that it dissolves in the glue, and you know, I think if you use too much, obviously, not only does it ruin the joint, but it tastes like crap. I just put 1 extra one just to really clamp it down right there. Just checking for some squeeze out, and now we'll see how this is holding up. Sometimes this thing does want to have fall off, so oof. Hang on. I think it might have the clamps. I'm gonna put that one off real quick. You see what it's on the lift the whole thing. See, that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
Really? Man, why is it? Really? All right, we're gonna do the same thing on the other side here. I had to remove some of the clamps off the other side just because it was giving me some issue, but we'll just get this side going and then reapply the clamps to the other side. But always a fun little battle. Oh my God. So the struggle is real. We'll keep most of the struggles in the video, I think, because it's good for you to see. It's good. It's good for morale. Holy sh. Yes. There we go. Just get it cranking. That's good enough for now. That's good enough for now. All right, so I don't know how we're gonna edit this in post, but we're having a little bit of struggles because of having to do this by myself. And Matt had to give me a hand. But yes, so now we're back on track. Just continuing to glue these up and getting them all in place. And we're gonna let this dry for 45 minutes, an hour, and we will then be able to just flip this. And we're gonna rinse and repeat the whole process on the other side and do the heel block. Nothing magical, nothing different there. Same stuff, different story. You just want to make sure that you get really good glue joint here, because you got to remember this is kind of where the rubber hits the road. Your neck joint is super important to the structural integrity of the guitar. So take your time with it. Really think it out. Just like a lot of the other glue up steps that I've talked about in the past with guitar building, you want to do a dry test first. That always helps. It allows you to kind of make sure you've got your clamps in the right space. Make sure if you need any clamping calls, you're going to have those. It would suck to get in the middle of this and to have the oh crap moment that Matt and I just had. But that's part of it. But yeah, you can save yourself quite a bit of trouble by dry testing all these glue ups. So that'd be my piece of advice to give you. Yeah, so just clamp these up, and then we'll come back when we pull this out and when we go over to the tail block. All right. Super cool. So we've got almost no squeeze out on here, so it's absolutely perfect. Just gonna grab a little chisel. We'll knock off a little bit of squeeze out we have, and then we're gonna move over to gluing on the tail block. Sweet. And you'll notice that it's almost flush there. There's a little bit of a ledge there. We've got the slightest little bit of a ledge there, and it gives us plenty of meat on the bone for when we take this thing to the radius dish. So we're gonna now glue on the tail block using the same exact technique. All right, so we now have the clamps off. The neck block is fully glued on. Looks super good, super clean. All we got to do now is rinse and repeat on the back side. We have this beautiful piece of figured Spanish cedar, which is not going to be seen, but it looks nice. Look, ooh, so that's going to go on there. We have it radiused as you saw earlier, and we're going to do the exact same thing we did on the neck block. just rinse and repeat using salt deflator. And what I do a lot of times, just to point this out, just to make this a little easier on me, I actually do make my tail block usually a little bit larger than the actual width of the entire sides, and I'll just sand that off. I'd rather have too much than too little. So put a little glue on there. This side going on much easier than the last side. That's just how it goes. That's just how it goes. That's just the way it is.
Some things will never change.
Some things will never change.
Yeah.
Cool. Next clip on here. My wife and my son are wrestling in the house, so the sounds of a joyful household. Takes a little bit of work here to get this second side on, just because now it's a little sprung. Not quite as, see, I talked all that junk about it being easier on this side. That's what I get. That's what I get. It's just a matter of kind of getting it into place. And then you can finagle it to where you want. Alright. So my son's, because we work from home, so my son, like I said, my son and my wife are wrestling in the house, squealing, but he's got like a loose tooth, and it's about to fall out, and he's all excited. I keep telling him I'm going to tie a string around it and tie the other end of the string to the bandsaw blade and crank it on, and he's like, sounds good! We were talking about hooking this tooth up to the CNC machine and just like moving the y-axis. So I think we are pretty much good to go here. I'm just going to check for good squeeze out here in a second. Remember, the neck joint is, you really got to get it right, because the neck joint's obviously what's got the load on it. The tail block here, not nearly as crucial. Obviously, I still want to get it as perfect as possible. It's just, there's no load on a tail block other than the strap. But no, that looks super good. So what we have is now the rim is basically closed up. It should now drop nicely into the mold. The next step for us is going to be actually to do the kerfing. And I do solid kerfing on my guitars. I talked about it in the previous episode. But I usually make those out of mahogany, Spanish cedar. It just really doesn't matter what I make them out of. So the next video, we're actually going to do that. I'll show you how I go about making those, bending those, and gluing those on. Then we're going to radius the sides, and we're going to be ready to start gluing the top on, so we'll start to get to the point where it starts to look like a guitar very, very soon. Yeah, so we appreciate you guys watching. I know it's been a while since we've done a 3,000-year-old guitar builds video, and we are back on track now. I think we'll start doing it at least once a week for you guys. And make sure you check out the t-shirt, check out the store, which is a link below. Make sure you like and subscribe, and what else? We'll see you in the next video, guys. Appreciate you. Thank you. Best time of your life. That is not the correct answer. Oh, I was 38 and a half.
Had
28 and a half.
time of my life, and I never felt this way before. Yes, I swear it's the truth, and I owe it all to you.
We're just the actual worst.